My name is Bill Thomas. I'm the Deputy Chief of Enforcement of Field Operations and Enforcement Division for the Bureau of Automotive Repair. Chief DeRay had an obligation this afternoon and has asked me to step in and facilitate this meeting or this workshop on his behalf. The workshop is for the Vehicle Safety Inspection Program. We originally had a workshop in April to gain industry and public input on stakeholder input on what types of things should be in the regulations and in the Vehicle Safety Inspection Program manual. We have subsequently gone back and working with DCA Council and BAR staff have developed a Vehicle Safety Inspection Program manual or inspection manual and regulations to implement the program. Matthew Gibson will be presenting those in just a moment here, after which we will solicit input from the public. And everybody is the public now. The advisory group has adjourned. So with that, we'll hand it off to Matthew, and Matthew will go through his entire presentation and then solicit input at the end, correct? Or do you want input while you're going?
No, I'd rather just get through it first. Thank you for asking. And now we're all clear.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you, Matthew.
So, again, I'm Matthew Gibson. I'm a program manager in the BAR's executive office. As Bill had said, this is our second workshop to discuss the proposed vehicle safety inspection program. This is the first workshop we held back in April, covered decisions BAR is made as a result of feedback received from questions we posed to our internal and external stakeholders about implementing this new program. Assembly Bill 471, it creates a new vehicle safety inspection program by January 1st of 2024 that will, at a minimum, combine and then ultimately replace the Bureau's current brake and lamp inspection program. My PowerPoint today is 10 slides long. It's going to cover the proposed regulation text, the vehicle safety inspection manual, and also the requirements for vehicle safety stations and for safety technicians. I should say this presentation is, and the text that you hopefully have, is a rough draft. It's meant to solicit or intended to solicit input. And we anticipate that there will be changes based on our discussion today, as well as internal discussions at DCA and BAR. I do want to reiterate some of the things that I have talked about related to the vehicle safety inspection program. We did talk about it in April. I also talked about it during the January BAG meeting when we talked about how we were going to deal with Assembly Bill 471 and how we were prioritizing those tasks. BAR is considering a phased-in approach to ensure that licensed technicians and stations can reliably and accurately perform the required inspection. We are taking into consideration the financial impact of the initial implementation of the program on stations and consumers, and we are working to determine the best way to use our existing systems and infrastructure for the new program. So, next slide, Zach. The proposed regulation text creates a new Article 2.5 in the California Code of Regulations for the Vehicle Safety Inspection Program. The proposed regulation text includes the incorporation of the Vehicle Safety Inspection Manual, licensing requirements for vehicle safety stations and safety technicians, and a sunset of the lamp and brake inspection program 6 months after adoption of the regulations. Next slide. So the Vehicle Safety Inspection Manual sets the inspection requirements and failure criteria for each system and area of the vehicle to be inspected. The manual consists of the following 9 sections. So first section being information on technician access and vehicle identification. And on vehicle identification, I'm talking specifically about, well, this is going to include plugging into onboard diagnostic to equipped vehicles. There's a lighting system inspection, which is similar to our current lamp inspection. There's a passenger compartment inspection where we're going to be inspecting the windshield, the mirrors, restraint systems, along with other items. You get the next slide. There's going to be a visual inspection of the tires and wheels. There'll be a brake inspection system that's much like our current inspection. Brake system inspection that's much like our current brake inspection, yes. And a visual inspection of the steering and suspension system, a visual inspection of the body structure, as well as a road test that will not only have a stopping test, similar again what we do with our brake inspection, but also will have a determination if the vehicle can be safely controlled, safely and effectively controlled by the driver of the vehicle, as well as equipment requirements. All right, next slide. So, in addition to the items in the manual, and specific to OBD2 equipped vehicles. The vehicle safety inspection is going to include a scan of the vehicle's identifying information and a scan of information related to the vehicle safety systems. On all vehicles that are being inspected, we'll be trying to determine if there's any open safety recalls. And a vehicle that fails to communicate when it's scanned or has unrepaired safety recalls will fail the inspection. Next slide. So on the safety station requirements, licensed stations are going to be required to have a safety inspection system that includes a data acquisition device, a biometric device, and internet connection. Other equipment requirements are similar to existing equipment requirements for lamp and brake adjusting stations. And those requirements, such as reference manuals, aiming equipment, brake inspection tools, all those are covered in the Chapter 9 of the Vehicle Safety Inspection Manual. And applicants will be subject to an initial inspection prior to licensure to verify they possess the required equipment and employ a licensed vehicle safety technician. Next slide. So for safety technician requirements, in order to obtain a safety technician license, the applicants must possess an ASC certifications must possess ASC certifications in steering, suspension, brakes, electrical and electronic systems. They have to pass a licensing examination, and the license is valid for 2 years and will not require re-examination for renewal. I'm just going to point out that currently for lamp and brake adjuster licenses, there's no ASC or certification requirements. The lamp and brake adjuster licenses are 4-year licenses, and when you want to renew that license, you actually have to retake the licensing examination. These licenses, again, they're 2-year licenses, but when you go to renew, you don't have to retake the licensing exam. You just have to have the required certifications. Next slide. So 6 months after adoption of Article 2.5, the following regulations will become inoperative. So Article 2 for official stations and adjusters, Article 3 for the lamp adjusting stations, and Article 4 for brake adjusting stations will become inoperative, thereby sunsetting the lamp and brake inspection program. And last slide. Since January, we have been seeking input on the best and most effective way to transition lamp and brake stations and adjusters to the new safety licenses so that we have an operational program on day one. And this slide kind of represents what we've come up with to deal with that. So a currently licensed lamp and brake adjusting station with licenses in good standing are going to be able to forego the licensing application fee. A currently licensed brake adjuster with licenses in good standing will be able to forego the license application fee, the ASC certification requirements, but when they go to renew the license, they will be required for renewal, and also the licensing examination. And that's it. That's the last slide.
Thank you, Matthew. Okay, so with that, and hopefully everybody in the room has had the opportunity to also pick up a copy of the draft regulations, and those that are joining through the webcast, those are published online in the workshop notification. So with that, we will open it up to questions or comments. Dave Kusa.
Thank you, Matt. Dave Kusa, ASCCA. Will the current program and the new program run concurrently for that 6-month window, or will it just be the new program?
It depends on the adoption of the regulations when it occurs. So this program won't be in place before January 1st of 2024. If this works out as we hope that it will, these regulations would actually be adopted prior to that date so that I can get people licensed to be adjusters and stations prior to when the program actually becomes active, like on day one. So depending on that period of time, that overlap will be reduced by that after the implementation of the program. So if these regulations became effective on January 1st of 2024, then yeah, the lamp and brake program would go for 6 months. But if these are hopefully within the last quarter of 2023, then it's possible it'd just be 3 months of overlap between the two programs.
Okay. So potentially we could have a current lamp and brake inspection at Shop A and the new safety inspection at Shop B running concurrently.
Yeah, well, you could have a station that would have lamp, brake, and safety all at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do just lamp and brake. You'd have to bring in the safety inspection as well.
Well, while there's overlap,
Well, what I'm saying is, right, you know, if I'm the consumer and I call, you know, shop A and say I need my safety inspection, and they say, oh, no, I just can do lamp and brake, right, then I'm trying to find somebody. Or if I say I need a lamp and brake and I go to this person when I really need the whole thing, right, because I'm assuming I would need the whole thing as the consumer.
So we build the programs, and DMV says how they get used. It's going to be what DMV is requiring of the consumers to get these vehicles back.
Got it.
To give them revived titles to salvage, primarily.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the DAD and the biometric scan equipment, will that be the same as the smog check stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
And like I mentioned, we're trying to use existing systems and infrastructure.
No, excellent. Yeah, great.
So we're trying to, if you have an OIS, then theoretically that same OIS would have new software for the SIS, and you'd be using all the same stuff.
You use the same equipment, just have to, if you're new to the program, just acquire the new equipment, the required equipment for the safety side, rather, but your DAD and biometric stuff would be the same. Good, okay. Then I had another question. Oh, so just so I'm clear, the ASE certification license examination for existing inspectors certification, that are certified, they won't have to do the required ASE and license exam until their license comes up for renewal.
So what we're pitching is the idea that if you are a lamp and brake adjuster and your license is in good standing, so there's no disciplinary action,
right?
Then you're going to have to apply to get it, but then we will give you the vehicle safety station or a safety technician license. But then upon renewal, you'll have to have the ASCs.
Okay.
You won't have to do the examination.
So that would be 2 years from that date, or 2 years from when I originally got my recertification for lamp and brake? Like if I'm 3 days away from my lamp and brake recertification, is that when it happens, or is it 2 years from when the state when we get the new license?
I think we time these out in such a way that they're based on birth month. So it's actually the initial licensing would be 18 months to. It's a 2-year license, but the initial license would be somewhere between 18 to 36 months.
Okay.
In length.
So there's some window there, right? That all of a sudden, a lamp and brake inspector won't be able to do it like in a moment's notice. Okay. And then I'm assuming new signage for the shop.
Yeah, no, I put in a whole thing about, I was trying to think of I wrote something about it. I just didn't remember what it was.
Yeah. Okay, cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Does the license examination, does that currently exist, or is that a new examination?
It's going to be a new examination. I'm currently working with the Office of Professional Examination Services here at the department to build it, but I will tell you that a lot of the actual inspection on this car, so a lot of it's visual. And I was running through these systems. I'm talking like visual inspections of the suspension, of the passenger compartment areas. There's going to be a lot of lamp and brake in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there'll be some other questions to cover the new areas as well.
Nikki?
I actually have 2 comments. One, why aren't you just from the very beginning incorporating putting pictures into the inspection? I mean, when a lot of shops now are doing digital inspections, I mean, we've been doing that for a long, long time. So if they're inspecting the brakes, they can just take a picture and show what it is and put it into the inspection report.
Well, the reason would be because I didn't think about it. But I appreciate the comment.
My other comment is that purely the name of this inspection now is vehicle safety inspection, and I think that puts that all into a new realm for the industry. And I'm wondering if you should be looking at one of the requirements for the shop to have an increase or some level of bond or insurance, general liability insurance, because now the shop is saying this car is safe after it leaves your shop. And I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice, but I think that's something that needs to be considered or looked at because it's just purely by the name of the program.
That's a fair point. We will have to consider it. That's one of the things I hadn't considered because we're not doing it for any of our licensees right now, including lamp and brake. But I appreciate the comment. We will have to discuss.
Thank you.
Jack. Mr. Moladano. Oh, Mike.
Yep, Jack Moladano, California Auto Body Association. Let's step back a little bit in terms of the legislation itself and the intent here. The intent was to, under AB 471, was to address some issues out there that consumers may be going through when they're purchasing a revived salvage vehicle, because that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with not all vehicles. The inspections are primarily going to be for revived salvage vehicles. So in other words, the car was at one point determined by the insurance company or something that it was a total loss salvage vehicle. So it was purchased in a salvage pool and repaired. So the legislation was intended to make sure that, combining the brake and lamp program and then creating this new inspection program and adding these additional criteria to make sure that whoever's inspecting the vehicle, they do a proper inspection, a safety inspection, to make sure the car is safe for the consumer who purchases the car, right? So my understanding is that there are approximately, maybe 250,000, give or take, vehicles that are revived salvage vehicles each year. Am I off?
So the only way we had to judge it, or to judge how many of these are being done, is through the sale of lamp and brake certificates, and it looks like we sell enough to do about 250,000 inspections a year.
Yeah. So, and what I've heard from my members out there in the collision industry, they say, and they may, have brake and lamp inspectors. The vehicle will come through currently under current law without this program being developed, and the frame looks like a banana, and they got to pass it. I mean, they clearly know it's not safe, but the brakes, may work fine, and the lights work fine, or, the windshield is cracked and that sort of thing. So this program is designed to protect consumers in terms of the vehicle being safe. Now, a couple of the comments I want to, follow up what Nikki mentioned, because I think they're good comments. The one with the photographs. And I know the legislation doesn't specifically talk about photographs, but there's some, some ability, through the regulations. If I'm an inspector, and I'm looking at this vehicle, I'm inspecting a vehicle that cosmetically looks great. It'd be nice to see what the car looked like before, right? Because I'd focus. If it was hitting the front end, I'm going to focus my attention on the front end maybe a little bit more, right? And so I think the photograph requirement is something that should be considered in your, when you're going through this. Now, maybe if they don't provide the photograph, maybe they have to do some additional, the inspector has to go through some additional types of, a process. If they show the photograph, maybe the car wasn't maybe it wasn't damaged. Maybe it was a surgical strip of some kind, right? Say, hey, it was a surgical strip. There's no damage here. So at least the inspector now knows, hey, this is what we're dealing with here. As the safety inspector, I think it would be helpful to have photographs, and I think that's what Nikki was alluding to.
Well, I think her photographs were more about looking at when you're inspecting brakes, as an example she used, that you take a picture of the brakes. Yeah. But you're actually talking about pre-repair photographs.
Yes,
yeah.
To show to the inspector. But the idea of photographs in your deliberation should be considered. The other thing she mentioned was the insurance requirement, a minimum requirement. I know it's not required for other types of even ARDs or brake and lamp and smog, but this is a different situation. We're talking about safety here. I mean, you're representing to consumers that the state has approved this facility to make sure the car is safe. I mean, if someone screws up and something happens, you want to make sure the shop just doesn't fold up, right? I mean, you want to make sure they're protected. And I think the insurance requirement should be considered uniquely here because this is something different. You're representing, because you're not representing anywhere else. There's the state's approving a safety type of having someone inspect these vehicles for safety criteria. So I think that should be something to be considered in your deliberations. A couple of other comments. In terms of, suspension, and I know I've been told that in terms of the vehicle that's been involved in an accident may need an alignment, I guess, a wheel alignment of some kind. I don't know if your regulations do require any kind of alignment requirements currently.
So all the repair procedures, all the pass-fail criteria is actually built into the inspection manual, which is incorporated by reference. And no, there's not something in there about a check of the alignment short of the performance of the vehicle at the time that it's being driven and the visual inspection of the suspension.
Yeah. Is that something that should be considered?
I'm happy to consider it if you're asking me to.
Okay. I'm not a technician, but I know there's some other folks out there that'll talk about that issue, so I'm just raising it right now.
Okay.
And in terms of, cars been involved, I mentioned the car looking like a banana. In terms of any kind of measuring requirements where not requiring special equipment, but basically having a measuring tape and being able to measure the OEM specifications underneath the vehicle of some sort. I mean, is that something you guys have talked about or explored or in these regulations?
There has been some discussions about it. They're not currently in there, but it's something that we obviously can continue to discuss. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions at this point. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.
Johan?
Just a couple of things. I know early on when we were working on this and had the early workshops, there was a lot of discussion about the integrity of airbag systems. And I know they're going to be doing a system scan on the vehicle and all of that, but in some cases, there's ways to bypass those, and you end up with a bunch of trash in the steering wheel instead of an airbag. And so I know early on there was a lot of concern about what are they going to do, because we realized they're going to disassemble the vehicle to inspect the airbag and all of that. And so it's almost where you have to almost get a declaration from the repair facility that did the salvage restoration to the vehicle, that they declare that all the things that are buried, basically, are replaced and to the OEM specs, like the airbag systems and things like that. The other one, and I know my friend Gene Lopez was going to try and be on here today, and one of his favorite pet peeves is all the issues they have to go round and round with on the, like, lane departure sensors and all of that, where nobody ever goes in and verifies that those are recalibrated and actually function the way they're supposed to. So those are a couple of things that I'm thinking of that we need to take a look at and figure out some way to safeguard consumers so they don't end up, I mean, we know the nightmares we all faced after Katrina and all the flood-damaged vehicles that were washed through the states that didn't pay attention to salvage titles, and all of a sudden you ended up with a salvage title that got washed, and all of a sudden it's a regular vehicle, but everybody knows it was a salvaged, flood-damaged vehicle. So those are just some of the concerns I have, not only for the concerns of the industry, but for the consumers that end up buying these things and realize they just inherited a major problem. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. We have a hand raised in the audience here, so we'll go to that person.
Sorry, I got a follow-up.
Oh, there's a follow-up.
Sorry.
I don't want them to feel neglected back home. I can see their hands in the video. It's
okay.
Like,
Jack brought up a good point on the alignment. It does two things. It could tell you whether the steering and suspension is going to be within specs, safe to drive down the road, but it could also be a really good indicator on the frame. It doesn't tell you how much the frame is out, but if the alignment won't go into the spec, good indication that there's probably frame damage and such. So it would be it would kill a couple birds with one stone.
okay. I suspect alignment's going to come up more than just the two times, but I'll just say this. Here's some thoughts on that, and then I'm going to thank you for your comment, obviously. But okay, if I really feel, or if we decide that having this vehicle's alignment checked is an important part of the safety inspection, then I don't know that we're going to have to require this alignment rack as a piece of equipment, and the safety inspector would probably be the one who would have to do it. Because I don't know because I've looked at this from different angles, potentially I guess they could sublet it. I mean, even still, I'm still thinking that I'm holding the safety technician responsible for that vehicle being inspected and being in compliance. So I don't even know if I'd be comfortable with a sublet. And then if I had them, let's just say let's just say we allow the consumer to have the vehicle aligned and bring the printout into the shop, I'm still in the same situation where I don't know if I can really hold the safety technician to that printout. I mean, I don't know what his responsibility would be in that situation to verify its validity or not verify its validity. And then if it's inspects, but he drives the car and it makes U-turns on its own. I don't know how he's supposed to, like, reconcile those two realities. I don't know. Maybe we can keep talking more about alignment. There is another, and I brought this up right at the beginning. It's like we're thinking about what we are foisting upon the industry here as far as equipment requirements, and requiring them to get alignment racks when they don't have them. It's going to be a little expensive, and so it's just some of my thoughts.
Thank you, Matt. And I'm going to call Jerry up. I also want to comment that, okay, and then there's another hand raised, but we are aware there's folks viewing on the webcast, and we will get to those folks as well, and certainly open to their input also. So hang with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Matt.
Hey.
One point Nikki brought up, and I hadn't even thought about it. I've got a client, and they have a store in Texas. They're wanting me to kind of get them towards California regulations. When I was going through their repair orders, I see vehicle inspection. I go, what the heck is a vehicle inspection? Turns out Department of Public Works in Texas requires a vehicle inspection yearly. And when you go into the system, it's basically a safety inspection. Nikki's issue was safety inspection, the terminology insurance. I'm just letting you know that Texas says vehicle inspection. So the other point goes back to, I think, the last workshop. And if I'm correct, we were talking about who pays for the inspection.
It would be the person who brings the car in.
Okay. So here's my concern. And I couldn't get through the last time. Could have been my own
Maybe
fault.
it wasn't entertaining enough. I don't know. I'll do better next time.
Well, I couldn't get through it. It could have been my own computer fault.
Okay.
So
it wasn't the material then.
No.
Okay. Just so I know.
So here's the thing. Back in the 90s, when we were doing the first auto body program, we were also looking at taking over the inspection of these vehicles. It ended up going to CHP, but in the process, we worked with Vehicle Theft Task Force, so forth like that. We found cars through them, that had been bought, that had been salvaged. And we're dealing with the consumer who bought them. They came in, we inspected them, and had to tell them they got kind of ripped off. So the problem is, and after that last time, I went ahead and reached back out to some of the people that I still know out there in the industry in Southern California on that type of stuff. And they're saying it's still going on. What happens, the customer unknowingly goes ahead and buys it, know it's salvage title, but they think everything's fine. Then afterwards they find out the frame's a banana. Who's the one that should be responsible for that? The consumer's now having to pay to get the car inspected, and also find out that the car's a banana now. And the person that's actually working, which this industry has gotten quite busy, shall we say, on doing that reconstruction, there's a lot of them that have already get the car registered with just a, however you want to say, a brake and lamp license. But the rest of the stuff, 2 cars welded together to making one full, breaks in half when it goes across the curb, that customer that bought it owns both halves. And that customer are they being protected? So my recommendations, and some of those people that I reached out to, was the person that rebuilds the car should be the one that brings it in for the inspection and be responsible for the inspection. No different than the old days of the seller of the vehicle is responsible for smog compliance. That's my only comment.
And I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much I have control over. How much control I have over that, but I would agree.
Yeah, I think the smog certificate is a statutory requirement in vehicle code, so it might require a legislative fix. But
in the old
it's something we can look at and talk about.
And I'm just throwing that out. If we're going to protect consumers, there's more than one way that we might want to, if possible.
I think I mean, even if I go to Craigslist, man, they're like, people are selling their cars without smog certs too, they're putting it on.
Oh, yeah, no, but you see it, salvage title.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
we deal with those complaints still to this day. Bought a car and it won't pass smog, and then we have to inform the seller.
you didn't follow through. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I know where it was and where it is now is looser, but I'm just saying if there was some more, if we're going to go down this road, because at some point I have a vision of seeing that this might be something like Texas. Every 2 years we have to do a vehicle inspection on the cars that are licensed on the road. So there could be some groundbreaking as far as going through it. That's all my comment was. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good comment. Pete.
Let me get
Pete said he
comfortable.
was next.
I want to make sure I'm strapped in for this. No, I'm kidding. Oh, go ahead.
I got my novel.
Hey, but you don't have to look at me because I got you on the camera over there, and so I'll just I'll focus in on you over there.
Okay, I'm Pete Bessick with the California Auto Body Association. And finally, we're getting an opportunity.
Go ahead.
Okay, Pete Bessick, California Auto Body Association. Finally, we're getting the opportunity to do something that's needed to be done for quite a number of years, and that is to get the salvaged vehicles off the road or make certain they're safe to be on the road. The BAR in the state of California mandates that a repair facility repair a car in a manner specified by the manufacturer and in accordance with those specifications. There's no reason why someone who is going to take a car that was deemed a total loss shouldn't repair the car in the same manner, with the exception, of course, of some parts that are primarily not structural or safety related. So with that, we think that certain things should be done in a certain manner. We've already talked about the rebuilder who's going to present this vehicle for an inspection should be providing with that vehicle for inspection the manufacturer's repair specifications. That should be part of the application, or when they bring the vehicle in, they should be presenting all those documents for the inspector to view. They should have pre-repair photographs, which was already adjusted, because that's going to be key for anybody that's doing this inspection to see how seriously where the damage was. For example, the front suspension could be ripped out, as well as structural damage to the vehicle. We want to make certain that person who's doing the inspection knows what to be looking at, where to focus their attention. Those photos should probably be a four-corner photograph set, and clearly identifying the VIN on the vehicle. If the car was ADAS equipped, they may not be able to certify it themselves, but they should have a certification from a BAR registered certification a company to show that they did it, because that would give the opportunity to the inspector or the BAR a chance to go to that facility to find out if they actually did it. And the same thing would apply to a four-wheel computer alignment system. That it wouldn't require the certification facility to have that. What they would require to do is to have a receipt from a BAR registered alignment facility that will be able to give them all the specifications that you, the BAR, can follow up and check to see if they actually did it, or if it was a phony. I'm going to pull this out of the old highway patrol thing, and that is receipts for parts supplied to repair the vehicle. That might be one of those indicators of somebody that's doing a chop shop type thing, that they show evidence that they actually bought parts. The inspection facility used to perform the inspection should be equipped with the following minimum equipment. A lift. Gee, you can't inspect the underneath structural components of a vehicle unless you can get the car up off the ground. So they need to have the ability to get the car up off the ground. They would have to have a measuring system. Now, when I'm talking about a measuring system, I'm not talking about an elaborate system. A measuring tape capable of measuring millimeters, centimeters, and inches. And the chassis reference manuals will give the technician all measuring points to verify the chassis is square. A set of inexpensive tram gauges, which will verify the chassis is level. That's basically all they need as far as equipment. And then, of course, a scan tool that would be capable of measuring the electronic operating safety systems on the vehicle. Technician education. The minimum educational requirement for a certified technician should be, and I was thinking of ICAR Gold initially, but we looked through this stuff, and ASE B4 course, structural damage analysis, would probably be better than an ICAR course, because that would focus directly on what we're trying to establish.
I wonder if Robinette's listening.
What's that?
I don't know, as long as ICAR's not listening.
Well, and the only reason I'm not saying that is anything bad about our car, because I don't know what they have available. But I do know that this ASEB4 specifically addresses that, and it's tested. They do test. The issue of insurance is a big deal, because we are talking about total loss vehicles that we're going to put in the consumer's hands, and those consumers are going to be driving those cars on the road. Someone that's driving that vehicle that purchases it, that rebuilder is going to disappear as quickly as the wind. So their chances with that rebuilder, as far as getting any recompense for a bad repair or a bad car, is gone. The deep pockets are going to be the guy who does the certification, and that means that anybody that's going to be certifying these total loss vehicles is going to have to do their best to avoid a business-ending lawsuit, which means that they're going to have to be insured. And I'm not sure that the BAR shouldn't require it, simply because it's going to protect the BAR as well. If you're going to recommend somebody that's certified to do these inspections, you better make sure they've got insurance as well. The rebuilder needs to be the person that brings this vehicle in for inspection. It can't be after the fact. It can't be the consumer that bought the car. It has to be the rebuilder. That's the person that needs to be responsible. And it would be folly to expect anything else. And by the way, even if the consumer owned the vehicle that's a total loss, that shouldn't exempt them from having to go through the same process. Just because they owned the car and they retained their salvage doesn't mean that that car is going to be any safer on the road than it would be if some rebuilder did it. That's the end of my book. Thank you for the time.
Oh, I mean, you didn't rip me up at all, but I appreciate it.
Thank you, Pete.
But now they're gonna get me. Here comes more.
Bud Rice.
Hi, Bud Rice, Quality Tune-Up. I have like three quick questions. The first one is, today, lamp and brake are separate entities. They're separate things. Do people get them separately today for a reason? Does somebody go get a lamp and not get a brake, or get a brake and not get a lamp?
Yes. And did you want to know why, though, or not? I mean, because
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just say yes and we can move on, but all right. So obviously, for taking a junk or a total loss vehicle and restoring it to a salvage title, you need a lamp and brake. Vehicle code says so. There's also a lamp and brake inspection program, but more specifically, the brake inspection program is used on ambulances and other emergency vehicles by CHP on their certification process for those vehicles. And currently, there is also a fix-it ticket provision within vehicle code about the idea that if your left front headlight's out and you got a ticket, you could take it to them and they could sign off on that, fix the ticket for you. So that's the reason why.
So if it switches to this encompassing safety program, can somebody still get a partial, or is it now an all-encompassing service?
It's just one. I can't break it up.
It's just one code?
It's just going to be one inspection.
Correct.
That's going to have
So
everything.
if they go, they're going to pay a whole...
They're going to pay for the whole thing.
The whole thing, okay, all right, great. Then, do you have any idea what the numbers are today? Because I have some stations that are breaking lamp service, and we just don't do very many, to be quite honest with you, you know?
Well, Jack kind of hit on it earlier. As far as lamp and brake, so we actually sell more brake certs than we do lamp certs. And if we take that as a guide, I'm thinking the primary reason is because of the the requirement related to ambulances and emergency vehicles needing a brake certification. But, you know, again, it's like 230,000 primarily for salvage. I'm guessing based on the fact that we sell, that's how many lamp and brake together we sell. But then we sell another 20,000 brake over the top of that, approximately.
Now there have been conversations in the past, and we've had conversations with AAA that have had an interest in a yearly or a biannual vehicle inspection program for California, and there are other states that also do that today. And we're talking about a specific purposed legislation here for salvaged vehicles. Is there any interest in maybe expanding that to maybe do a annual or biannual that would both include salvage vehicles and because I'm telling you, sometimes I drive it down the freeway and I'm going, that car should not be on the highway right now. You get to see them. So I don't know if there's a way to maybe contemplate the idea of maybe not only salvage vehicles, but maybe an annual or biannual, and then the number counts start to make sense for the service industry to ramp up and get busy with it.
I got like three things to that. Okay, so in looking at the number of lamp and brake certs versus the amount of number of lamp and brake certs we sell divided by the total number of stations over 12 months, it's like 12 inspections per station per month. So it's like you wouldn't see very many. There's probably some stations that are doing just a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how the quality of inspection, I'm just saying there's probably some that are really cranking them out. That was the first thing I was going to say. There was three, though, man. I forgot the other two because that was so good. Oh, I don't remember. Well, anyway, you look like you were going to go on. Was there more?
No, that's it. Thank you.
I'm sure it'll come to me later. I'm just going to look at you and just say it, and then you'll know that's what it was.
I took a little bit of offense because my car with 540,000 miles on it and peeling clear coat and cracked windshield, I am offended that you would say that I shouldn't be on the road in that car.
As far as, I was going to tell you the other, now I remember. So we talk about the idea of the fact the legislation is requiring us to develop this program to combine and ultimately replace lamp and brake inspection program. But we're not saying how it's being used. I don't know if we really fundamentally say how the Smart Check inspection program is used either. Not CHP, DMV, but through the vehicle code, that's actually where they say how it's used. Okay, so if there was an interest to do it, then somebody would have to go and introduce legislation to change the vehicle code to require a vehicle safety inspection or an inspection without the safety. I don't know how we want to phrase it, but the point is, it would have to be. It's not us. The other part of that is that I don't know if the inspection is currently drafted with. So we're talking about the idea that maybe I'm not covering everything. I suspected if we went to a biannual program, what I have is too much. I don't know if everybody's okay with everything I already have. So, just another thought.
Vicki.
Okay, so the car comes in, you're supposed to do the inspection as presented, right? Just like the smog program?
Well, there's a difference between this and the smog program. And I don't even want to say why. I mean, like, it's because this is done out of order. Like, so if you think about how you do a smog inspection, you're being prompted by the OAS or through the Bar 97 to do this in a specific order. But because you're looking at the entire vehicle at all these different systems, it's possible you won't be going in any particular order, or you'll, as a flat rate technician, might have found a very efficient way to do it, and we're not going to tell you how to inspect the car.
Shame on you if you're flat rate.
Shame on you.
Yeah. That's been made illegal, sorry.
You don't do flat rate? I bet you in Southern California, anyway.
Look up LA Downtown Motors.
How many people we lost that might actually be watching about, well,
Story.
what's flat rate? Anyway, I apologize. The point I'm getting to is that it's possible that somebody might do the entire inspection and never have even logged into the system. And at that point might have identified problems and might have even sold repairs and then got back in and then redone or inputted all the information necessary for the vehicle to have passed. I say that cautiously only because I was working on the safety inspection system itself as far as how it was going to function. And when you go into the system itself, there's going to be like 8 separate screens. Some of them you have some level of control over, some of them you don't. So for example, like if you have to plug into the car, you're not going to have control over whether it communicates or not, but if it doesn't communicate, it's going to be a fail. But if it communicates, it does, and it's going to be a pass, or the inspection system should tell you that it passes. The one thing you can't select, and you can select any of them in any order except for road tests. Road test has to come last. And so I don't know that I'd want people selling repairs prior to having done the entire inspection, because I'm sure that consumers wouldn't appreciate being sold repair after repair after repair, as opposed to just getting it all at one time, doing it all at one time, and having the car certed. So as opposed to like, I don't know if I'm trying to capture the same data. So obviously we have smog check cars, tested as it's presented. I think we still allow them, like if the check engine light's on, to say your check engine light's on. I don't know. I don't know that I'm trying to capture the real, like, I want to make sure the cars are safe. I guess that's what it really comes down to.
Okay. And what kind of printout does the consumer get in the end for either a pass or a fail?
It's going to be a vehicle safety report. It's like a VIR, it'll be a VSR.
So they're going to get this system passed, this system failed.
It might have multiple pages, but it'll be very similar in design to the VIR.
Okay.
So with that, we will certainly come back to the folks in the room with follow-up questions, but the folks on the webcast have been waiting patiently, and I'd like to give them their opportunity to speak. So David, you can let us know if there's questions from the webcast. I'm pretty sure Gene may be coming online to clarify iCar and stuff, but thank you, David.
Our first request comes from Lynn. Bear with us just a moment, Lynn, and we are going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes.
Okay. So just at any time you need me to stop, just let me know, because I have about 22 questions. We're a brake and lamp shop that's been doing brake and lamps since the inception of brake and lights, since the 70s. We do quite a few brake and light. I mean, we do a lot. You guys mentioned about having the who would pay for this, and if the person selling the car, whatnot, should pay for it. These cars are coming from 3 places. They're coming from retention. They're coming from the wrecking yards that are selling the vehicle as parts, and then the people put them back on the road. And they're coming from the auctions. People are going into the auctions. The auctions are allowing the people to go and buy these cars from salvage auctions, fix them, and then they're selling them illegally on the streets. So those are 3 places they're coming from. So I'm not sure that you can require the seller to, pay for these inspections or be responsible, because they're not even in the picture the minute they sell these vehicles to these people. That's just what we see. So I just wanted to comment on that. One of the things that there was a mention about was having the vehicle hooked up to the OBD2. We get older vehicles that are not OBD2 capable, and so how is that going to work with their vehicles?
They're not going to be plugged in.
How are we going to be able to issue a certificate?
Well, it's going to be when you input the year of the vehicle, background logic will drive it past that as a certification requirement.
Okay, I understand then. And so another thing is that we do a lot of semi vehicles. We do a lot of tractor and trailers. We do a lot of campers. And we're only doing light inspections for them because they're under the gross vehicle rating of our license, and the shop down the street does the brakes, but they don't have a lamp license. So the customers are going to them for the brakes, and they're coming to us for the lights. And we're getting the people from Fresno, we're getting them from Porterville, we're getting them from all over the area because we're the only ones that do it here in Bakersfield. So I just didn't know how it would work with the customer coming in, and we can only do half.
So you have a lamp and brake, right?
Yes, we have both.
Okay. You can't do half. I mean, that's the problem. Or not really a problem, that's just how it's structured. There's no partial.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that's the problem, because our license only goes up to 10,000 gross vehicle rating.
Well, I would tell you that the new licenses don't actually have limitations like that.
Okay, so it's just the limitation of the shop then to be able to do it.
You're going to be limited by your equipment. So if you're talking about the Class A, Class C, like licenses,
right?
Yeah, those go away.
Oh, I see. Okay, so then if the gentleman down the street that just has his brake inspection license and not his lamp license, then he wouldn't be able to do it at all because he doesn't have, it has to be all encompassing, basically.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you, earlier in the presentation, I was talking about the idea about what you had to have, or who we're trying to convert, or
Yes.
lowering the barriers to licensure. You have to have a lamp and a brake, and they both have to be current, valid, and in good standing in order to meet whatever we can provide to try to get you converted over to safety. So if you only have one, then you'd have to go through all the regular licensing requirements.
Okay. Then for the used car vehicle dealers that are legally licensed, they're required by Division 12 in the vehicle code book to have all this inspection done before they can sell the vehicle. And so when we're doing it, it's going to be redundant. Is there something that can be just a quicker inspection for them, or it still has to be the whole thing?
It's going to have to be the whole thing. Maybe they should just become safety stations.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Now, I understand that there was a mention earlier about airbags. That is our concern. As far as the airbags, are we responsible for just the lights being able to work on the dash, whether they work or don't, or we're responsible for the deployment?
So John made a comment about that earlier. It wasn't lost. I didn't respond back to it, but I did try to cover as much as I could in the manual. There's two ways right now that I'm dealing with airbags. So right now, there is no airbag requirement, right? I mean, if you take your car in for a lamp and brake and the airbag light is on, or if the airbag isn't even there, this car is not going to fail. I think the way I wrote it, and it was in the passenger compartment area, was one is that the airbag or the SRS light has to run its bulb check, and it has to, not stay illuminated. So I'm just talking about the system's ability to check itself. And the other thing is that you have to make sure that the airbags that you can visually see are actually in the car, and they don't look like they've been glued or taped back together.
Okay.
That's kind of where I'm at with it. There's one other thing I was going to say, and actually it goes back to kind of what John was talking about, and some people have mentioned ADAS. And I talked about this phased-in approach. There's information that we don't know. I don't know how, or if we can, through the DAD, what we can get through ADAS, about ADAS systems and the system's ability to function, or check the functioning of that ADAS system. So one of the things we're trying to accomplish is through the plugging in of OBD2 cars is to see what information we can determine. We were going to get information on the VIN number decoded, and we're going to be doing research to try to determine if we can marry that information together to see what we can see on each type of car. And then from there, when we go into the next phase, then we will have an automatic self-check of the ADAS systems occurring, hopefully. But we have to get more information from the cars on the road before we're going to be in a position to do that.
Okay. Let's see. How will a re-inspection work? will we be able just to go back into the DAD inspection and go back where they failed and just go ahead and say complete, or we have to run the whole inspection all over again?
Yeah, you gotta go all the way back through it.
Okay. And we motorcycles, same thing, basically.
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't have
What
as
if
much passenger compartment part.
Yeah.
I'm only
Okay.
kidding. You know what? Motorcycles turned out to be a particular issue while I was working on this because of all the different types of configurations for which we call motorcycles. Because there's
Right.
motorcycles that look like cars, right? Think about the Slingshot or
Yes.
some of the other ones I've seen. So, anyway,
The
but
Spider.
yeah,
Mhm.
motorcycles have to get this if they're being revived to its salvage title too.
Okay. And as far as vehicles that are conversions, so you have some vehicles that are converted from drum to disc. I mean, is that how does that work? I mean, currently we pass those by. We don't do the conversion vehicles. One, because we don't have specs on a conversion, something like, you know, an older car. And two, if they're registered as a, you know, 2021, they're obviously not going to pass the inspection as a 2021. So, but I'm just curious about conversions.
So they would. So first off, the system's going to allow for you to determine if it has disc or drum or disc and disc. I mean, the system will allow for it. So I'm not worried about it from a technological standpoint. I think what we're talking about is literally how you're going to inspect it and what standard would you base that inspection on.
Yeah.
Well, I would hope that you can hit the specs. I mean, like most rotors and drums, or rotors, they have it embossed on the edge. Hopefully you have the minimum discard spec that's on the rotor,
Yeah.
and you can use that as a judge. And obviously if you take the brake pad off and it's all the way, you only got 2 millimeters, and I'm sorry, forgive my Japanese automotive experience background. If you got 2 millimeters of material left, you're not going to pass it. So, I mean, that's kind of what I would think about
Yeah.
in that inspection.
Okay. And vehicles that are also modified, as far as being lowered, is that going to be a safety issue as far as if it seems safe enough to brake, the braking and all that, but it's been, you know, the suspension's been cut off, and I mean, how does that type of stuff work?
There's a visual inspection of the suspension system, well, steering and suspension system, and as long as the modifications are done in such a way that it doesn't damage the components and the vehicle can be driven, can be safely
Okay.
and effectively controlled by the driver, as the manual is
Uh-huh.
currently drafted, then it should be fine. However,
Okay.
if we include an alignment, then it'd have to be able to be aligned.
Yes. Okay. If at current, if something that is not in the vehicle code division or in this paperwork that you're drafting, um, is it okay to will the computer, the DAD, prompt us and ask us the questions that we're supposed to be inspecting, or is there going to
No.
be a part? No.
Well, no, the actual inspection itself is in the manual itself, meaning that everything you're required to do is going to be in the manual. The system's going to be structured in such a way that it's, I don't know how to explain it. In state service, it totally makes sense to me. It's an exception reporting system. So if I look at the brakes and I select the brake section of it and I say it passes, it's going to ask me, you're going to have to input certain information based on your inspection of the vehicle. But if you say it fails, then you're going to get into drop-down menus and you're going to have to report what failed and why.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's just not driving this. I can't imagine putting somebody through, given all the different vehicle configurations. I mean, just think about how many tires are on a big rig versus a motorcycle. I mean, like, I can't imagine driving somebody through all these menus, trying to get every configuration and every type of possible vehicle. This is the best way to do it. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Okay. Well, that makes more sense than how I was envisioning it. How responsible are we? Because I think there's somewhere in there that we read that we needed to input the person's name that's bringing the vehicle into the DAD, I believe. How responsible are we to make sure that that's a legitimate person, that he's just not giving us a fictitious name?
I mean, you're only as responsible as the information you're provided more than you would get any other customer. First, it's not that, just so you know that we're talking about the safety inspection system. The DAD is the unit that it's just a piece of hardware that plugs from your laptop into the car. Having said
Yeah.
that, I would only want you to get whatever customer information that you get. You're right that the way the law is currently drafted, the name of the owner, or in theory, the person presenting the vehicle, is supposed to be on the certificate of compliance. There is currently an assembly bill pending where that requirement is being removed.
Okay,
Possibly,
yeah, because
if it passes and signed off, yeah.
right, currently, when they come in with a salvage certificate, the current registered owner is AAA insurance. There is no current owner. And this is what we went around with the investigators here in our department, because they're having problems with illegal dealers. And we're just saying, well, according to the title, we're just putting, according to what you want us to do, that's what says Geico Insurance, registered owner. I mean, there's not much more we can do on that. And as far as there was some mention about having liability insurance or a bond for the shops. I think if they tried to, because we have our own liability insurance as far as garage keepers. I don't know if they're talking about doing anything beyond that, but to me, that would seem like if they want us to do in special insurance for this inspection, they should also have it for the smog inspection also, instead of making the shops responsible for their technicians, which we don't license. Just a little side note. As far as crooked frames, sometimes you see a car going down the street and they're a little crooked. Is that a failure also?
Yes, and I would hope that you'd see that when you're looking at the car from underneath. So there's a requirement to inspect the frame of the vehicle. So I even know in the brake inspection manual right now, they talks about the idea that you would look over the suspension of the vehicle, but this is actually now a failure item. If you find a problem with the suspension, or you see existing collision damage of the frame or problems with the frame or any of the suspension components, it's a cause of failure.
Okay. This should be my last question is, once the vehicle's been inspected and passes, now the vehicle has a rebuilt title. How responsible are we for our inspections? Is there a time frame? Or just once we pass it, we're no longer responsible for it after that point?
I mean, you're as responsible as you are for your lamp and brake certs. I mean, again, once you issue the cert, it would be used for the same purpose. It's just a different cert name, right? And DMV would use it to issue a salvage title out to that vehicle, if that's what it's being used for. And so it would be the same.
Okay. I had one more question and I don't remember what it is right now.
Now you're just teasing us because you said the last one was the last one.
I know, I did.
I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
No, I don't remember what it is. That's okay. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
Thank you very much for the excellent questions.
Next on the list, we have Wayne. Bear with us just a moment, Wayne, and we are sending you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, while we're waiting for Wayne to unmute the microphone, I'm going to read what Wayne wrote. And Wayne said, adjuster licenses are a 4-year license and expiration dates are based off of their birth month.
I totally agree with that.
All right, let's move on to Jean Lopez. Bear with us a moment, Jean. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Who, me? Because, I mean, I know Gene's not with iCar anymore. I mean, he's the one who caused the problem. We're going to call Pete back up.
Pete caused that problem. That's right. We'll blame that on Pete. So let me,
Thanks for joining us.
thanks for letting me, give me some time this afternoon.
And thanks, Matt, for your presentation this afternoon. So regarding ICAR, and so there are ICAR Gold Class businesses, and there are ICAR Platinum individuals. And Pete was right. In order to be a Platinum individual, and there are 5 roles, one of which is a structural technician. You have a refinish technician, a non-structural technician, an estimator, and a damage insurance damage appraiser. Those 5 roles. In order to become a Platinum individual for a structural technician, and that's what you would need regarding these safety inspections, it would require welding certification. And so that would go above and beyond what you would need for these vehicle safety inspections. And so would the B4, the ASE B4. There are questions in that test and that certification that go beyond the vehicle safety inspection. So while it's a great idea, I don't know that that it would be necessary based on your 3 other ASE certification tests. So yeah, that's where we are with that. Great idea. I just don't think, I think that the cost of being a Platinum individual, an ICAR Platinum individual, to some $4,000 to cover some, I don't know, 39, 40 courses in ICAR would be above and beyond. So let's talk about title transfer. And so when a vehicle is given that salvage title, it is that repairer, that rebuilder that, in my opinion, would have to bring that vehicle in for the safety inspection. And so that, you know, that would be the person or persons who get the inspection. And then once that inspection is performed, in slide 5, you mentioned a scan of safety systems, which is a great idea. However, the scan tools, either aftermarket scan tools, which Sidner's Collision Center uses, and OE software, which we also use, will not always identify ADAS systems on that vehicle. It just doesn't recognize them. And therefore, you have to either go to a manufacturer's build sheet or do a VIN scrub to find out all the different safety systems on that vehicle. So given that, we talked about alignment and we talked about OE specs. I believe that the the alignment specification printout would suffice for this inspection company to recognize that the vehicle did meet the alignment specifications, and in the same breath, have the OE measurement specifications also provided to the safety inspector to ensure that the alignment is correct and the OE specifications are correct if there were some structural damage to this vehicle. And so given that, the ADAS calibration specifications should also be required. So you have a salvage title vehicle that has ADAS equipment, it has to be calibrated. And so that repairer, whether the repairer has calibration equipment or they sublet the calibration for that vehicle, that data should be provided as well, that the calibration was successful and complete. Then I would go on to say that there are, and maybe it was Johan that said he had a 500,000 mile vehicle and a cracked windshield. That leads me to cracked windshields and tinted windows. Oftentimes, these salvage vehicles come with illegal tinted windows. I believe your safety manual should have a point about glass, windshields, and tinted windows. That we shouldn't allow a vehicle to go back out on the road illegally with a broken windshield or tinted windows.
And just so you know, that is related to the windshield and also the rear glass, that isn't actually in there.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, good, good. And so,
but not about tint. Because then we actually went around about tint, and it had to do with the idea that I'm going to have to get some sort of I don't even know what it's called, like an opacity meter or something to try to determine the percentage of tint and whether it meets the requirements or not. And then there's some sort of like concern about, anyway, tint's not currently in there, but what I'm taking from your comment is that it should be. And so, thank you.
Yeah, I think it should be. So, and I bring that up because part of our benevolence program currently, we have 2 vehicles that we are gifting in the month of September, and 2 of these vehicles have like limousine tint in the front windows, and we've got to remove them. We're not being inspected for them, but I don't want to give a vehicle away that has a potential to be pulled over by law enforcement because they have tinted windows, right? So we're doing that on our own. But in one of these vehicles that I test drove, you can't see outside in the middle of the day. It's that dark. So yeah, that would be important. And back to my first point, I think that when title transfer takes place, it should be that rebuilder that has to take this vehicle in with the initial title salvage and bring all these documents with them. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gene.
Thank you, Gene.
Okay,
Any
next
more,
on the
David?
list we have, yes, sir. Next on the list we have David Robinette, iCar. Bear with us just a
Here
moment.
comes.
We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Here I am, and please do not fear. I appreciate the comments that have been made. You know what? The deal is the industry at large is definitely in a state of change and trying to accommodate the change and learn their way through it. The legitimate collision repair facilities out there are training by whatever way they can go. iCar being a premier way to do it, no question about it. But there's an awful lot of training out there with the OEM specific. iCar has some of that, and so do the OEMs. So the responsible people doing the work, that's really not who we're talking about in these cases. When we're talking about a total loss vehicle, we already know that they can either be a constructive total loss, which means structurally it might be sound, it just costs more to fix it than it's worth, or it was structurally compromised and should not be repaired. And if it was repaired, it should be repaired to some very strict standards brought forth from the OEM procedures. So I just said what iCar training essentially encapsulates is all of the training around those proper repair procedures. So anybody doing the repairs, reconstruction, if you will, on a total loss vehicle ought to be, and this has always been the case, they ought to be repairing them back to OEM standards so that the vehicle will perform as it was designed, no matter its year, make, model, how damaged it was. And generally the case has always been that it's an economic issue. So I personally have this notion of if it was too costly to repair, why is it being repaired and resold in the first place? That's philosophically a problem I see out there in the first place. But to the point of doing inspections, I was going to say there's a couple of notions out there that I've run across. There's some states that have started to talk about a progressive, if you will, if I could use that term, inspection process, that during the repair process, during the reconstruction of the vehicle, at certain stages, there would be an inspection of sorts required to check off, okay, while the vehicle is this far along and this structural repair has been accomplished, we can take a look at that before it gets all painted and carpeted over and everything else, which is very difficult to see if a technician is doing their job well. It's going to be hard to see those repairs or confirm those repairs were done properly. So I've seen some government municipalities kick that around and try their hand at trying to see if they can maybe be part of the repair process as it goes through to verify things that are so hard to see after the fact. And to the point of the ADAS and the electric vehicles that are out there that have these different systems that don't necessarily have dash lights to tell you there's something particularly wrong. They do have repair processes and calibration procedures that involve either a static recalibration or a dynamic road testing process. So if you're talking about doing a lot of these newer vehicles and doing the inspections, I might suggest that maybe this progressive during the repair process inspection be looked at as a possibility. And then also be sure that if there's dynamic road testing, that it's done and done properly so that the vehicle really is pointing the right direction. The radar systems, the LiDAR, everything is pointing the right direction, is calibrated properly, will stop the vehicle when it's supposed to stop, nudge you back into the lane when it's supposed to nudge you back into the lane. And to the point of the airbags, there's, the system prove out and the dash light goes out. The only other test is to run it into something. So we don't recommend that, of course, but that's about all you've got available to you when inspecting those systems. So I think really what it comes down to is how sophisticated our inspection process is, how we hold folks accountable for that. I think the downloading and keeping of the repair procedures is going to be necessary. The repair processes for cars that are not total losses that's a requirement now as it is. So it ought not be any different for a rebuild vehicle. And the printouts from alignment, from recalibrations, all the things you can possibly do to be a good business person as you're going to sell this vehicle to a consumer, which at the end of the day, we're trying to see if we can ascertain the safety of a vehicle that's going to find its way onto the road, and a consumer is going to probably buy that vehicle trying to save a little bit of money. But that's the interesting challenge before us, because if we do all the things we're really supposed to do, that car might not have should have ever been on the road after all, because of the cost factor. Somebody's going to cut a corner somewhere. So that's the thought I would bring to it. Absolutely, the training is going to be the first place to start. The second thing to do, obviously, is to document everything that's been done properly. And if you've done all that well, then the motoring public, the purchaser of that vehicle, is likely to feel a little bit more safe in that vehicle. The chances are the vehicle is going to be repaired more properly. And at the end of the day, I don't think you're doing anything other than a safety inspection. You're not warrantying the vehicle. You're just saying at this point in time, on this day, all of the knowable and testable features are working properly on this vehicle going forward.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. It just sounds like there's a lot of requirements we want to put on the person who reconstructs the vehicle, and those are not under the purview at the moment of the vehicle safety inspection program. It's almost as though it's almost like we're pitching that we should have a whole new license type, and I don't know who would be regulating. Actually, I probably already, and I don't even know if it doesn't exist under CHB. Anyway, just food for thought on that.
Any more from the webcast, David?
Yes, please. Next on the list, we have Lynn. Lynn, we are sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello?
Is this the same Lynn, though?
This is the same Lynn.
One.
So you've remembered the question.
I did.
All right.
My question was for the tires. I didn't see in the draft where the age factor, if there was an age factor, because I understand tires have a date on them. Some tires, they look good, but the date is really old. And they don't have cracks or anything, but they're just, 5 years old or something. And I wasn't sure if there was going to be anything like that.
Well, and I can consider it, based on your comment. I would just tell you that I wrote it in such a way that I didn't specifically talk about age by talking about the condition of the tire. and the possibility that a tire could be really new but be in really bad condition, like if it was stored in the sun its entire life, or a tire that could be older might actually be okay because it was not. And so I talk about, there's in the inspection of the tire itself, I have some criteria that you can fail it for based on your visual inspection of the tire.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is the entirety of our request for comment.
Oh, second rounds.
Yeah. Thank you, David. So with that, we'll go back up to the follow-up questions that I'm sure came up hearing all the other questions. So, Johan.
Just real quick, since Lynn made the comment on tires, it's been a long debate with NHTSA. I was working with Jonathan Morrison when he was working for NHTSA, and we had discussions about tire aging, and really the threshold they have given is 7 years. If the tire is more than 7 years old, it's more likely and more subject to fail based on NHTSA's history. And so they had given a parameter of 7 to 10 years, at which point in time those tires should come off and they should be replaced. So there's other literature on that, and I'm happy to send it to you, Matt, if you want to take a look at it. Thank you.
I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Dave. Thank you. Lynn had brought up like converted vehicles. Two ways, brake specifically, right? I have a 71 Chevelle that was four-wheel drum. Now it's disc on the front, but they're from a 71 Chevelle, so clearly the specifications match the car. As you obviously, and I'm sure know, right, there's plenty of aftermarket brake systems available.
Suspensions and frames.
Yeah. You would have to conform to the aftermarket brake rotor specifications, not the vehicle rotor. Okay.
Right.
And I think what Wayne might have been referring to on the 4-year renewal, slide 7 says it's valid for 2 years. Is that changing that rule?
I'm changing it.
Okay, good, cool.
Meaning that it's going to be a 2-year license versus a 4-year license.
Yeah, okay. And then the tinted window question, you get pulled over and the officer determines your windows are too dark, and all they're doing is taking a piece of plastic that is darker than the threshold. So, hold it to the window. If you can see the plastic, you're good. If you can't, it's too dark. So that might be an easy gauge.
That might be an easy gauge.
I don't want an opacity meter.
I don't know what I need.
And some of the things that David had brought up, that there's a reason this vehicle was totaled in the first place. Why is it even on the road again? Well, it's either the homeowner bought it back and fixes it himself, or like we've mentioned, bought at auction, right? And there's a whole cottage industry of people that will buy a car, get it so it drives and looks good, but not necessarily going to pass its inspection, right? So my concern is that, the reason people buy the salvage car to start with is it's less expensive, right? So if somebody has to make the car meet these, which they should, meet our regulations here, it's going to be the same price as a non-salvage title car. But the consumer's not going to know that, right? So if you have most of these cars, I think, they're not going through an ARD to get fixed, right? There's somebody doing it in their backyard, in their garage, and as we know, if I repair a car and get paid, I have to have an ARD. If I'm fixing a car to sell it, I don't have to have an ARD. I'm not getting paid to fix it. I'm just selling the car I fixed, right? I can fix my own car all day long. So the seller, the rebuilder, for lack of a better term, gets the car so it looks good and is roadworthy. The consumer has no idea that these regulations exist. They buy the car cheap, bring it in, needs 10 grand worth of work. They have no recourse, right? Buyer beware. Is there a possibility of some sort of, consumer awareness? Before you buy your salvage vehicle, understand what the process is to get it registered.
That's always a possibility.
Yeah.
It certainly is a good idea.
Yeah.
It goes for smog check too, right?
Yeah, but we have a means of going back to them, right? Because usually it's just I'm selling my car, right, and not necessarily because I think Lynn had mentioned it, right? It's like if I buy the car at auction, I'm not registering it. If I know I'm going to buy it at auction, fix it, and sell it, I'm not putting my name on it at all, right? It's gonna be either,
Floating the title.
right, yeah, exactly. It's gonna, yeah, it'll flow right through me, so you're never gonna find me.
That's true.
So, now the consumer is stuck, and, the idea obviously is save cars and secondarily protect the consumer.
Mhm.
So I don't know, if there's a way to do that, and you're a big giant brain, I'd be awesome.
I just don't, I appreciate that you think my brain is big and giant. Having said that, I don't have an answer for the parts of this that I can't control.
I understand,
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it because it's been coming up a lot, this scenario. You guys keep bringing it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to use that big giant brain in a meeting coming up in the very near future. Jack.
Just one follow-up, because based on the questioning. So I think the program, I guess, envisioning like a third party inspecting this vehicle, right? I mean, the inspector. And then there was a question that prompted me to think, okay, so the rebuilder can become an inspector and self-certify their own vehicles. I mean, how do the regs work on that? Is that a loophole in the what if, and how would you determine and enforce? You can't run you probably wouldn't be able to run cars to determine if they're doing correctly, because they're not all they're gonna do is inspect their own vehicles, right? They're not gonna be open to the public. So is that a potential issue with the regulations?
If somebody, they have to have an ARD. I mean, you have to be a registrant in order to get these licenses. So starting off with the fact that they have to be an ARD, as opposed to somebody who doesn't work for the public, who only reconstructs vehicles and sells them, and then that's their sole purpose in life. They may not necessarily have an ARD, but we would register that person. And they could theoretically not work on cars at all. I mean, it might potentially be a loophole. I imagine if they are certifying vehicles that do not meet the specifications, it's only a matter of time before it comes up and through a consumer complaint or through some other tragedy. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, you're right. I'm probably not going to get a car in there to run if they're not working on the public. So.
Nikki.
Would it be possible, since you have to put all the recalls in, would it be possible when they put the VIN number into the system that the bar can just populate the recalls?
Yeah, just like we are, whatever we're doing for smog check right now on it, it's going to transition over to,
You're going to,
it's going to happen here too.
okay.
Yeah.
The shop doesn't have to look them up?
No, it's not your responsibility. It's going to happen. As a matter of fact, it's one of those, we're talking about boxes. Some of them you can control and some of them you can't. You plug it into the car, either it communicates or it doesn't, and it makes a decision on its own. Recalls is one of the other things. It makes a decision you have no control over.
Okay.
So either either there's recalls and it's been repaired, or there's no recalls, or there's recalls and it's unrepaired. And if they're unrepaired recalls, then it's going to fail.
Okay.
Or at least that's what we're envisioning.
So I'm going to stare straight at Matt and his big giant brain, so that way I don't see any more hands, because we're right up out of time at the 2:30 time. So certainly the Bureau thanks everyone online and in the room for participating and providing a great wealth of input that will help us to move forward and make this regulation package and this process effective for consumers. Certainly, if you think of something later, Lynn, if you come up with another question, you can certainly, Matthew's email is up on the screen and on the website, and so feel free to email any questions, comments, or suggestions to Matt, or you can even call at the 916-403-8060 number and leave a message, and we will have someone return the call. So with that, the Bureau thanks you, and we are closing out this workshop.